And on that note, let's take
What
it.
time is it?
Yeah, what time is it? Time for Blair's Animal Corner.
She loves our creatures, great and small. 5 peg, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. What you got, Blair?
Well, I want to talk a little bit more. Again!
Again.
I want to talk a little bit more about World Wildlife Day first. So, World Wildlife Day is pretty young. It was declared on December 20th, 2013, in the United Nations General Assembly's 68th session. They proclaimed the 3rd March by CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, not Florida. They declared it UN World Wildlife Day on March 3rd. Basically, it's taking a moment to look at the influence that we have on the planet, and in particular, wildlife. And it's used to raise awareness of the world's wild animals and plants, specifically in our own areas. And each year, it has its own theme, and this year's theme is "The future of wildlife is in our hands." So this is very much true, as we talk about often. There are lots of things that threaten our wild animals and wildlife, and the biggest threat, of course, is, does anyone know?
Oh, I do.
People.
No, that's what I was
Well,
going to say.
yes. But
I was going to say.
But what influence that people have is
Deforestation.
yes,
Pollution.
habitat
Global
loss.
warming.
Habitat loss is the #1, and then there's also overgrazing, farming, development, poaching, trafficking. All of these things are very important. They all pose an immediate threat, and we can do a lot to save all of these animals. A lot of the poster children for wildlife that we talk about, elephants, pangolins, rhinoceros, sharks, tigers, a lot of those animals are in particular poached more than the result of habitat destruction. But again, habitat destruction is in many ways our largest concern when it comes to wildlife. So, in honor of World Wildlife Day and the fact that the future of wildlife is in our hands, I want to talk
whole world in your hands.
about some really good news, you guys. It's so easy to look at something like that and think about all of these animals disappearing, and that the fact that it comes down to us, and feel like one person just can't do enough and everyone else is too stupid, and it's just hopeless. But the good news is
Good news,
other
everyone.
people are on board. A recent study from Duke University and the University of Virginia found that most Americans are willing to pay more taxes to support biodiversity conservation. In this study, they were specifically looking in the Gulf of Mexico. So they did a national survey. They looked at over 1,500 households, and they asked them about their willingness to help pay for proposed expansion of the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary, which is in the northern Gulf of Mexico near the Texas-Louisiana border. And they found that the grand majority of these households are willing to pay more annually, even knowing that it's going to stop all fishing except for hook and line in that area, and knowing that oil and gas activity would be severely restricted in that space. So this particular sanctuary protects reefs that are on top of underwater mountains that are called salt domes, and these reefs, as all reefs, are very important and have a lot of different species in them. These reefs actually have sea turtles, manta rays, whale sharks, all sorts of other threatened species. What's really interesting is that not only did they see if these households were willing to pay, but they asked them how much. And they found that people were willing to pay from $4 all the way up to $80 a year in order to support just this one sanctuary. This is nationally. This is not just right where they are. And then they added in a sliding scale question, and they found that people were actually willing to pay, with the sliding scale question, $35 to $107 a year more in taxes just for this one wildlife refuge in the ocean. So if we take the willingness to pay amount and multiply it by the amount they're willing to pay, that turns into billions of dollars over a 5-year period. And NOAA had estimated that it would only take $15 million to actually expand this sanctuary. That means the idea that people won't pay for it and that it's not practical is out the window.
Right. And here's the other part of that too. You know, the line and reel sort of fishing being allowed. You could be in a town filled with fishermen who that's what they want to do. That's the kind of fishing. And so the other side of this is going to be large-scale commercial fisheries who may not be based in the towns off the shores of which they are trolling and netting, and oil companies which are not rooted in the towns and areas in which they are drilling. And so then you have this. It's natural for people to want to preserve their living environment. So yeah, of course there's going to be a desire to do that.
Well, but here's the thing, is that most of these people taking the survey did not live anywhere near the sanctuary.
Oh.
So this was the really remarkable part, was geographic location had no impact on whether or not these people were willing to pay to preserve this habitat. That means there is an inherent value that people understand and actually care about in wild places and wild animals. And preserving biodiversity holds a value to the families of the United States of America, believe it or not. And in many cases, people actually cited the fact that they wanted to preserve it for future generations. It had nothing to do with wanting to go swimming or seeing the animals themselves or going fishing there themselves. They wanted to preserve this wild habitat for future generations.
Yeah.
So that means the willingness is there, the money is there. People understand the inherent value of wildlife and wildlife sanctuaries.
Spread this news far and wide, folks. Yeah.
Exactly.
We're not all bad.
That's right.
There's
And now,
hope.
just for fun,
Yay, fun!
I want to talk about some vertebrate sex. So I'm going to talk
Not
about
in, but vert.
vertebrate.
Yes.
In particular, fairy wrens. There's some pretty flirtatious birds, and they're pretty. They play fast and loose with their partner in life. So, in general,
I've been enjoying the fairy wrens up here in Oregon recently.
Yeah, they sing a lot. They have beautiful songs. They do pair bond, and they raise their chicks together. But 60% of the chicks born are the result of cuckoldery, which means the females go mate with another male, come back, lay the eggs, and then the father unknowingly is not the father and helps raise the chicks. 60%.
The question is, what was the father out doing anyway?
Right,
He was
right.
also cuckolding another male.
Right. So this is it takes a village.
So the fairy wrens are swingers. Suffice it to say, they've figured it out. They're all up into the key party idea of things.
Not just swingers, they're totally into polyamory, yeah.
Yes. However, these researchers from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology were expecting to see that there was reduced cuckoldery, aka males getting cheated on. So if you ever read Shakespeare later, you'll remember this word now when you see it. Cuckold is actually a word that has to do with a male getting cheated on by a female, but we never hear about it because it doesn't happen very much in the news. Anyway, tangent. they expected that actually aggressive behavior would have a huge impact on whether or not a male was cuckolded. That if he was aggressive towards other males in his space, it would be less likely that his female would cheat. It makes sense. He's protecting her. He's making it kind of scary to help his woman cheat on him, whatever. So that was the assumption. And so these Cornell laboratory folks made dummy fairy wrens. They played sounds. They were expecting to see this very specific behavior. They didn't. In fact, what they found was that singing indicated whether or not the male would be cuckolded. In fact, it was how fast there was a duet response and how strong the duet response was. So that's when they sing with each other, the mated pairs. So it actually had nothing to do with aggression. It had to do with how much they talked to each other and sang together. And now the question is, which in here is the fairy wren and the egg? is the female singing because she doesn't want to cheat on her male, or is the male singing encouraging a pair bond and keeping the female from cheating? There's the chicken-egg question. So that's where the next step of the research needs to go. But what they know for sure, more singing, more duetting, less cheating by the female.
That's a really interesting finding, especially since we know that zebra finches, we've seen a lot of research recently into zebra finches, and that their songs or their calls tend to synchronize. And the more the zebra finches talk to each other, the better relationship they have.
Yeah, it's all about communication.
Communication, yes. I love the little fuzzy birds that they used to get the birds singing. Sometimes it doesn't take much, you know.
I was gonna say, I was like, really, fairy wrens? Really?
They look like, you know, they represent the shapes and the colors of the birds that they would normally see in the wild. But when it comes to accuracy, or these birds are not discerning, I guess.
No. I guess not.
Guess not. All right, everyone. It is time for us to take a quick break. This is This Week in Science, and we will be back in just a few moments with more stories. I think there's moles and spiders and I don't even know what's going on there. Stay tuned.